My name is Kimberly, and I'll be showing you how to make a mask, face mask today. This is what it's going to look like. And it can be double-sided if you want. If not, use the same fabric for both sides.
Just last night. I met a lot of nice people there.
So first what you need is your stencils for whatever size that you want to make. These my Aunt Karen made for me to help keep my sizes straight. You'll need a large outside and a small inside. Two different sizes, but they'll come together, trust me. They should come together. So what I'm going to do is first cut my outer shell. For this one I chose sunflower fabric.
What do you think, Lieutenant? That we just played Clue and Colonel Mustard's the killer. Or the investment. Or his wife. Lieutenant Harp was overwhelmed by his attacker. He had 100 pounds of TC on his leash. Size and everything. Any chance to drop this picture by accident? That's the same chance this guy's gonna be happy to see his ass.
You always want to try to get as much out of your fabric as possible. So don't just be cutting willy-nilly. Try to get it close to the last cut you did. Make it as flat as possible, where the edges meet. That way your scraps won't be so uneven when you're done.
Sir, we attempted to interview Mrs. Smells-Fury about Lieutenant Harp. That annoyed the ambassadors. They're involved.
Now, I like a rotor blade cutter. For me, it just makes it a lot easier and smoother. Some people like to trace on their fabric and then cut with what we call pinking shears. Pinking shears, the good thing about them is your fabric won't unravel versus cutting with a rotary blade. It tends to fringe sometimes.
Lieutenant, I want you to comply with the State Department's request. Oh, Lieutenant Rapp? Yes, sir. Wasn't Lieutenant Hartman murdered by the Yes, sir. You said smoking gun. You were speaking figure. Yes, sir. I knew. Well, that's it. Yes.
And then now you have two pieces for your outer shell. Put away your first fabric. Now mind you, this fabric is one of the first ones I learned to cut on, and I obviously did not cut like I should. close to the corners and all that fun stuff. And forgive the wrinkleness, it got left in the dryer. So for this one, I'll be cutting 2 of my smaller shells.
Now it's your turn to get the peace of mind that comes with having CarShield, so you can worry less about auto repairs. Call or go online right now to get CarShield for yourself. Friendly, knowledgeable, money-saving representatives are available 24 hours a day. So if your car is 20 years old or newer, just tell us the make and model of your car or truck to get an instant claim quote. In a matter of minutes, you can be covered. I was elated that I had CarShield. We were the happy. It's no fun when you have a car that's broken and you can't pay for it. Here's how CarShield works. When your car needs repair, you take it to your favorite mechanic or even your dealer, and CarShield gets them paid directly. That's why CarShield is America's #1 auto protection provider. CarShield is just the best thing to take away the fear that something is going to go wrong with your car, because it will. And CarShield is going to be there to back you up. My experience with CarShield is that they absolutely come through every time I need it. If my car breaks down, I can count on CarShield to cover it for me. CarShield definitely has my back. Now it's the time to make the smart choice and protect yourself from sky-high auto repair bills. Call now for a free and instant protection plan quote. It's only a matter of time before repairs are needed, and once your car breaks down, it's too late. Call 1-800-403-9614 or go to CarShield.com. Get covered today. Oh, that's been cost is brutal. What do you try some Felix massages? Can I use something for it to make it work? Sure. It's wireless.
So now you have your inner lining, which will be the other side of your mask. Now what I use for my inner the inner part that filters out the microorganisms and stuff like that is something called Single Stitch. It's what they use for embroidery. It's thick. It'll help keep out the germs, but it's not so thick where you can't breathe. And you need 2 sheets. Now I cut these with the inner side, inner lining, and you'll see why later. So I just match this up with the lines. That way I only have 2 sides to cut. And then set that to the side. So now what we have to do is put together our inner lining and our outer lining. For the outer, all you have to do is flip it over inside to inside, so, or pattern matching pattern.
So you did go home with Navy lieutenants and MC parties. Why not, David? There have been other Navy lieutenants murdered. And you think my husband or the colonel would kill me?
I like the little clips because they don't poke holes in your fabric, and they're easier to take off during when you're on your sewing machine. And you don't have to use nearly as many. Now, since this fabric is the same on both sides, you really don't have to flip it. Just make sure it matches up the best you can, because, you know, you're human and it's not going to be exact. Unless you've been doing it for 15 years, then it tends to get a little bit better. But for beginners and intermediate, might not exactly match up. So put the stabilizer on the outside here.
Thanks, sir. You're welcome.
And put the clips on. Now when you go to your sewing machine, you're going to have to read your directions in order to thread your bobbin, how to thread your machine, because each machine's different, and choose a thread color that closest match the color that is most seen in your mask. And for me, that is the color that I'll show you here in a little bit. So now we're ready to go to our sewing machine. Okay, now we're at our sewing machine. So we're going to take our inner piece with the stabilizer. We're going to sew it first. And all we're going to do is sew down the side here. You're going to put your presser foot down. Give yourself about a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And what I do is I hand crank my machine 3 times. And then I back stitch 3 times just to lock in my stitches. Now I'm going to sew down the edge here. When you get to the edge, do the same thing you did up top, as I hand crank it backwards 3, and crank it forwards 3. Always make sure to land with your needle. When you're done, make sure to land with your needle up. That way it finishes its stitching. That's what it should look like. And now myself personally, I like to trim this close to the seam as possible without cutting into my thread there. While you're at it, go ahead and trim your thread. And what I do is I also have a little jar that I made that I put my scraps in for while I'm sewing.
So anyone who says lactate is a real nut is also saying Napier isn't a real cow. And she really ain't.
So for me, this is what it will look like. Now we sew our outer lining the same way. In embassy, sir. Saturday is often obscured by the post. Let me say, you come here sincerely again, and there will be another dead in town. Okay, so now that you have your two pieces sewn together, the next part is to clip these two together and sew your top and then sew your bottom, and you'll see what I mean. So what you're going to do is turn your outer lining right side out. And your inner lining with the stabilizer on the outside. And you're going to match them up. Now some people like to iron this part right here. I just like to finger press it. Personally, I think it just sits better finger pressed versus ironed. This might take some finagling. And it might not match up evenly, but your sewing seam allowance will fix that. What are you doing, Spot? Huh? Sorry, that's my kitty sitting over here. And you know, if you're matching it up and for some reason there's like a little excess, you can always cut that off. So your outer shell will be longer than your inner shell right here. And there's a purpose for that later in the video. So now, once you've got it all matched up and clipped the way you like it, you're going to sew the top and you're going to sew the bottom. I like to sew with the stabilizer up top. I don't know why, but to me that's just easier for me to keep track of. And I start exactly at the stabilizer, not at the end, but at the stabilizer. And this one you can get as close to the edge as you want. Just don't go over the edge. So your stitching can be off. You can see how it's not perfect. It's because sometimes the sewing machine, something slips or your hand slips, or just it's okay to not be perfect. You can fix it later.
But I don't know if I'd go that hard, and I don't know how helpful the file is, no tissue or fiber evidence. How do you
all I did there was just trim all the extra strings that kind of come off with your sewing machine. And I'm putting those in my little jar here. Now I'm going to trim off the top so it's not so pointy. That way it won't be so bulky when we turn it right side out. And the same with the bottom. So this looks a little funny, but when you turn it right side out, it will come together. And then the bottom. So, now I know this hole might seem really small, but it will turn out right side out through that little bitty hole.
Put in a steel plate right here, stopping your bullet and right in front of his heart. Is he talking? Colonel confessed to killing all 3 lieutenants. He signed an affidavit on the ambassador's order. Oh, you said no. I say, oh, yeah. There's no way we can do it. Well, guess it's your call, Lieutenant. If you want to wrap this up, or should I do it?
Okay.
Well, since you volunteered.
Go, sir. Have a nice evening. I have a report to do.
Figured you were going to say something like that. Goldsman.
You know, Lieutenant, you guys were pretty damn lucky. Colonel, you started off as a sniper in the Thai Army. Ciao.
I just learned that you were an Army sniper, Colonel. If you were trying to kill us today, we'd be dead.
So now
I think you were trying to commit suicide. Lieutenant Rathbone.
we are going
You pointed an unloaded weapon in the back.
to do our ears. This is some elastic I've already had cut
Save the ambassador you haven't.
to the length that I want it. Now I'm going to cut this in half to give me 2 pieces for my ears.
Yeah. I didn't recall so the murders would end.
I gave you one.
Harvard was found where he was killed. But the other Navy lieutenant's bodies were moved. Is that what would have happened if the gunner hadn't been there? Would have cleaned up, covered the ambassador's track. Go back to Thailand and face the death penalty. Can't say anyone here will be sorry to see you go. Not the Navy, not the DC police. No one just sorry you're all not going.
What do you mean?
You know? Angelique's staying here.
She can't.
I know. Why not? Because if she doesn't, the murders won't stop. It's not the ambassador you're following your sword for, is it?
See? 2 little ear straps.
So when in doubt, just say, let me talk to my manager.
Next, Carvana's 100%
So the next thing to do is to fold in your ends.
from their couch. Oh, how disruptive. No salesman there to help me pick out the car I need. But how does anyone find a car on this site without someone like us checking in? She's a girl. Oh, Molly. I can help you find a color you want. That sounds nice. Let me talk to my manager.
Buy your next car 100% online with Carvana. I don't just play someone brainy on TV. I'm an actual neuroscientist, and I love the science behind Neuriva Plus. Unlike ordinary memory supplements, Neuriva Plus fuels 60 indicators of brain performance. More brain performance? Yes, please. Neuriva, think bigger.
Lactate is 100% real milk, just without the lactose. So you can enjoy it even if you're sensitive to dairy. So anyone who says lactate isn't real milk is also saying Mabel here isn't a real cow. She really